When Thomasine Gyllenmoor made her literary debut, she was already 53 years old, and she would not have identified herself as a feminist. In fact, she wouldn't have recognized the term. She had already made her claim to fame by filing for divorce on the grounds that her husband had abandoned her. That was outrageous for her time, since people did not get divorced unless there was something seriously wrong. But she claimed that she felt unloved, and that for her was reason enough. The authorities were happy to oblige, since they had already sent her husband in exile for lese-majesty. This made her free to marry out of love, but by 53 she was a widow and living with her son that was a celebrity in his own right. As an author, she broke new ground by introducing women as the acting party of novel, something that had been neglected by previous many generations. Both in her own time and in posterity, she has been overshadowed by her much more famous daughter-in-law, whom, however, did not do something for women as such, and even her own house has been marked with a plague for a different author. She does, however, have a commemoration in the museum dedicated to her son. A generation later, she did, however, serve as an inspiration for other artists, as for instance Mathilde Fibiger. She went a step further than Gyllenmoor in that she used her authorship in order to advocate for women's emancipation. This was such a controversial subject in her time that her career as author basically tanked. Undeterred, she went on to practice as she preached and became the very first female telegraph operator, and this also means that she became the very first female civil servant in Denmark. So why does a middle-aged white male take an interest in the women's emancipation? Well, to me that's a false question, because feminism concerns us all, regardless of whether you are the oppressed or the oppressor. And first and foremost, I am by heart an historian, and if something has influence on how the society is structured today, well, I take an interest in it. For this video, I have sought out some locations that can be connected to individual women that has done something for women's emancipation. There's some restrictions to it, as A, it has to be in Copenhagen, and B, it has to be a building that can be possibly identified as somewhere that that particular person has either lived or worked. Many of these buildings are residential in nature and therefore nondescript, so you might easily pass them without noticing them. I would have liked to have a portrait of every single woman that I am going to talk about, but for various reasons that is simply not possible. When I have a portrait, it will be an insert with the building. Also, you will notice that I will show the name of the building at top and the name of the portrait person in the bottom. Without further ado, let's proceed with the story. Before women's emancipation became the word of the day, there had been plenty of occasions where rich people had made a foundation specifically for women. One of those were Louise Rasmussen, whose foundation was so well endowed that they have survived even till today.